All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Freedom Cast podcast. We're here with Chris from Mutant Metals. Mutant Metals is a family owned and operated manufacturer and developer of quality strength training equipment focused on innovating to fill the needs of the garage and home gym community. Chris focuses mostly on custom products and, in particular, is known for the UDA or Ultimate Dip Attachment, which has garnered some publicity as of late due to a conflict with Rogue that was resolved. But we'll talk about that here in the podcast in a bit. And I think Garage Gym Experiment covered some of those, so I don't want to repeat too much. So welcome, Chris. How you doing?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Can you give us a little bit of a brief origin story about how Mutant Metals came to be?
So basically what happened was I never really intended on doing this. This wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna start a fitness equipment company and yeah, it was some big plan. But basically what ended up happening is I guess the thing that really started it was my great uncle passed away. Um and he was real into tinkering with stuff. He had a lathe, a welder, a bandsaw, a few other pieces. And I ended up buying that from his estate when he passed, and kind of started messing around with it, teaching myself machining, metalworking, which I already had some experience from working in a foundry, um, but not to the extent that I do now. I didn't really have any background in making fitness equipment. All of my metalworking was for like foundry purposes, for lifting big slugs of metal into furnaces and um you know welding things to whatever needed to happen in the foundry.
Mhm.
But so I had a couple people that I ran into that seen that I made my own squat rack and J cups and stuff like that wanted me to do some custom pieces for them. And it was really just kind of a side project while I was still working. Um, and that's actually what I started with. I did my rack, I did J cups, I did like a sissy squat or something like that.
Mhm.
And then then I went into making it was a rack mounted reverse hyper for a friend of mine, that I actually just kind of randomly ran into on the internet looking for fitness equipment on Facebook. And he had me make him that reverse hyper, and then the dip attachment, the first iteration of that dip attachment, which I think I have a picture of it on my Instagram. It was basically like um, it's similar to what it is now, but it didn't mount like a J cup. It just had like a single pin that went through that you had to clip, and it wasn't real stable. And there was only two settings. Um, but that idea kind of came from, he had two younger kids in baseball at the time, and I knew he liked to get them involved with his lifting and showing them stuff. And but I one of the problems was I couldn't really figure out what middle ground I wanted to put the handles at, as far as like, so his kids could use them and he could use them. And so that's where the idea came from, of making the adjustable dip attachment, where we could remove the handles and knurl them. And it was just a one-off project, so it was like, well, we might as well do stainless handles, we might as well knurl them. um, and then obviously that kind of evolved into the the dip attachment that you see now, that
Mhm.
um, mounts like a J cup, has a built-in storage mode, which that storage mode, I've had some that came from some suggestions that I had online from a few people in the community that I talked to. Joe Gray being one of them. I talked to him a lot back
Yeah.
before, um, before this was even like Mutant Metals or whatever. He was actually one of my first like outside customers, that and we made some custom stuff for him, like a bench dock and a few other things. I think like a wrist roller, some barbell holders. a few other little things, but he really kind of gave me my first chance as far as like putting something out there and getting some feedback on it. And then it kind of just snowballed from there. And I think what a lot of people didn't know um, was that we weren't like some big factory or whatever. I'd get emails all the time about, um, you know, what my sales, can I talk to someone in sales? Can I like whatever it was, but it seemed people had the idea that we're bigger than we were. But,
Mhm.
you know, I essentially run this out of a ground floor basement that attaches to my garage where my garage gym is at. So, um, and that's kind of one of been the big issue as far as, when things go wrong, um, they tend to go really wrong because, we don't have, I didn't have any backup equipment. A couple years ago when it started, we started at the end of 2020, kind of in the thick of it as far as the pandemic went. Um, and it was already rough at the start because you know I came in when fitness equipment really started getting super popular as far as people buying the used stuff online, and I saw used plates go from where I could get them at 50 cents a pound anywhere to two, three, $4, $5 a pound in some cases, just
Mhm.
insane prices. And which is one of the reasons that I started making my own equipment also was I just couldn't afford to buy a brand new rack. Couldn't, I bought a couple Rogue bars, I have an Ohio Power bar, deadlift bar. Me and my buddy were competing power lifters for a little bit there. Um, but yeah, I mean, when we started, um, and prices started to rise, everything was actually pretty good. I was getting pretty consistent sales. Um, Everything seemed to kind of be working out real good. I wasn't like so busy that I couldn't handle it.
Mhm.
Um, we're getting stuff out the door. My cousin was working with me, and we started really like figuring it out as far as you know how to how to get our processes down, to get things out on time, to get our
Mhm.
quality better, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then the first big trial was um, our regular steel prices tripled literally overnight.
Oh, jeez.
I went from paying like, 45 bucks a stick for 2x2 tubing to $120 literally overnight. It was triple. And
Wow.
then stainless prices doubled. And, I was kind of left with this decision. Do we just jack the prices up to match, which is honestly probably what we should have done. But I had we had like this momentum going, and I didn't want to raise the price too high because it was already a premium price product. And you know that that was probably a mistake. I probably should have just raised the price, took whatever sales that we got, and just ran with it. Um, but I was worried that it was going to slow down a little too much. But looking back at it, I would have just raised them accordingly to what our prices were at the time.
Yeah.
Um, and then, kind of adjusted into that. I launched like the handles and some of the smaller products that filled the gaps a little bit. Um, but it got difficult again because all this equipment that I brought in, I got a backup lathe. My main lathe that I make literally everything on, including that hammer that made you guys, is on like this 1970s era closing tool room lathe that it's like a 12 by 36 lathe. Like it's not a machine that was ever meant to do like this kind of production. I know they did use them for some production work, but not like what I'm doing with it now.
Hmm.
And one of the big problems I had with that machine was these lathes used to have this control system in it. I don't know if you're familiar with how like a with like a snowmobile drive system works, but like
No.
a lot of them use like this pulley that moves in and out, and it has a flat belt that rides
Oh,
on.
like a CRT system. Yeah, yeah, continuous. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's like a variable speed. All it's doing is changing the diameter of the pulley as it's moving in and out. So this had one of those on it,
Hmm.
um, and it worked on this hydraulic system. Well, the problem was is there's no parts for this hydraulic system anymore.
Ooh.
So it would blow out from just overuse. Um, I rebuild that thing. It was at the point where it was breaking down twice a week, like
Ooh.
having replace seals. I probably wasn't using the right oil in it. Um, just a bunch of little stuff that really like it would cause these little issues that would just get out of hand because then it was all the plans you had for the week were scrubbed because the one machining day got all screwed up. So then it
Hmm.
affected the welding, and then it affected finishing and all, and we still to this day we don't do our powder coating in house. It's done by a custom bike shop that's about 20 minutes away from my house, and
Hmm.
I drive every unit there a couple days a week to get powder coated and bring them back. Um, we work with a machine shop that came a little later. Probably I was about 9 months in when we started working with this shop, and if it wasn't for them, the snapbacks wouldn't have happened because they allowed us to have some CNC mill capabilities. But other than that mill, that shop is like it's a time capsule. I mean, they're running all manual machines. Um, the bunch of lathes, bunch of manual lathes, presses. I mean, just I'll show this place one day. I'll take it
Yeah,
there,
we
and
should.
and we'll look at it. But these guys are just real like salt of the earth people that they're usually working on farm equipment or
Oh
fixing
wow.
stuff for local people, and um but they started doing a lot of like my threading because I couldn't do that at a fast pace. Their larger lathes were able to thread better than I could. um but they would do odds and ends, equipment repair for me, stuff like that. But um
Real quick, not sorry to interrupt. Why did you decide to go? Why did you continue to decide to go custom and partner with these individuals instead of kind of creating essentially an assembly line? And I'm not saying doing what some of the bigger guys were doing, but I don't know, hiring like 5 or 10 people and starting to do more volume. Like why did you stick with the purely custom stuff?
um it was really just not having access to space and resources. I mean,
Okay.
um, I wasn't making enough margins to hire anybody else other than what I already had with my cousin.
Hmm.
And you know, I was there was a lot of months where I was basically just working to break even.
Oh wow.
And that was really after those price increases to the raw material, that was really what it was. It was just breaking even, and and up until recently, that really was the case.
Yeah.
Uh, and I I didn't want to. Part of our problems is that it's almost we expanded too quickly.
Hmm.
Like for what we could really handle, I didn't really know what we could really handle was the problem. I didn't have all my figures figured out as far as like run times to
Yeah.
make everything, to cut everything,
Hourly rates and
if
all
you're
that.
gonna
Yeah.
if you're gonna do this stuff, you have to know your numbers as far as time, how much is involved with it, and I think that's kind of why you didn't see a similar product right away, was
Hmm.
because it doesn't really make much sense. you know you have these stainless handles which are very expensive, you know to buy the raw material to make them. The way I have to knurl, the tool is a tool that I designed that um, works on my original lathe that was too clapped out to be able to use for any kind of real machining. Just
Hmm.
just too sloppy. So um, it just knurls basically all day, every day, with this knurl tool that I made. But the downside is that you can't run it too fast. It just doesn't work, you know.
Mm.
So every one of those handles takes me a half hour to knurl. And if they screw up, you know, it's it. You got to
Yeah.
screw them, you got to cut them down into another product, whatever it is. Um, and the more equipment issues we had, the worse those kind of problems got.
Yeah.
So that's kind of those were kind of the big issues with lead times. Um, and it
Ha-
was why I couldn't really expand. I couldn't buy the equipment necessary. I couldn't buy CNC machines. I couldn't hire more people. I couldn't really keep scaling it up because the resources just weren't there to do it.
So the partnership with Rogue, just for people who are listening who don't have this background, so Mutant Metals got into actually you didn't get into anything. The community basically stood up for you because Rogue developed a basically identical product to what you had been manufacturing custom in your basement. And the community came after Rogue and said, "This is not fair. You're going after a little guy. It looks like a big producer is trying to stomp out custom manufacturing." And so Rogue came to you, partnered with you. If you listen to the Garage Gym Experiment podcast, Jake covers this in a lot of detail with Chris. I don't want to rehash anything, but how has that relationship gone so far? Has that helped you to start to think about scaling this a little bit more and give you the resources to move this thing along a little bit?
Um, so there's not really any increase in resources yet because you know it took a while to get the agreement kind of combed through. This is my first deal with anybody, so,
Yeah.
and it happens to be Rogue. You know, so you know I was definitely nervous going into that.
Mm.
As far as just you know what I didn't know what their intentions are. I didn't know you know what this was really about, if it was really them coming in to help me or if it was just whatever, you know, I had
Yeah.
no idea. So you know, it took a while to make sure that, you know, all the contract stuff was good and what we wanted to do for both of us. Um and then it took some time for them to kind of do their iteration on the design, and which they were quick on everything. I mean,
Yeah.
they about as fast as you can move to do something like that.
Nice.
And then you know they had to do their first prototypes, and you know they have invested a lot of time and money into doing this already.
Yeah.
And just in that is kind of where I relaxed a little bit because it's like, you know, I don't know how much it costs for a company like that to launch a product, but I know it's way more than what it cost me to launch a product.
Yeah.
So, and they got so much more at stake. You know, there's uh, it's just um so it took a little bit of time to get going, but you know now there's I think the first like 20 of them or something have shipped.
Nice.
So you know we'll probably start seeing some resources coming in from them in the next month or so.
Yep.
uh, and the plan is to kind of shut down taking orders for a minute.
Okay.
Not shut down production. That's the whole point, is to keep production going. I have so many emails about people saying, "Oh, I heard you're shutting down production. You know, do I have to cancel an order?" No, you don't have to cancel an order. We're, you know, we're moving as fast as we can, but we have to stop taking orders for a minute, step back, get all these systems in place that are going to help us keep track of things better, communicate
Hmm.
with customers better,
Yeah.
everything. You know, I have to email everybody. I either have to email everybody by blast through our website client. We use Squarespace. Uh,
Yeah.
so if they're not signed up for emails, I can't get to them. I have to send individual communications. You know, it's super inefficient because I'm putting in all these hours on production. You know, my wife she's disabled. You know, she's legally disabled. A lot of foot issues, a lot of leg issues,
Mm.
that kind of started in the military and progressively got worse and had to get more and more procedures. And right now she's not driving. So I have two kids and everything that's going on. She can't drive. It's just,
Oh, wow.
The last few months have been insane,
I bet.
and customers are getting frustrated, but I get it, I wouldn't be too happy if something was, you know, as far out as we are on some of these orders, but um and I don't mean to make excuses, but it's not like we're just not putting the effort in. It's just that
No,
it
you got a
it
lot on your plate.
it's just been, it's been tough these last few months, um but yeah, we're gonna step back, get the systems in place, and then hopefully the idea is to build some kind of real shop, um, on the piece of property that I'd like to build my house on in the next couple years or so.
Very cool.
Because I have to get my wife out of this house. We're in an old craftsman style house that's, bunch of stairs, and she just can't handle it. So we got to build some kind of ranch or split level or something somewhere and get her out
Yeah,
of here to have her a little bit easier time. But
very nice.
the plan is to build a small shop and then actually step away from manufacturing a little bit.
Hmm.
We'll always have a manufacturing component, um, because the idea is that I still want to be able to understand what these manufacturers are looking for. I learned a lot through this first Rogue interaction with, what they're looking for as far as a product that's efficient to make, that has the correct margins, that works in their system. And every company has a different threshold for those things as far as what they're willing to do. But the idea is to kind of switch our main customer over from the individuals and switch it over to current manufacturers that are either already making
Oh,
fitness equipment or are just, fabrication companies or whatever that are looking to get into the space, but lean more into the development
yeah.
and the beta testing and stuff like that. But how it's probably going to look is, I have a ton of product ideas that I've been working on here and there when I have time, which is basically none lately. But um, there's a few really cool ideas I'd like to get out there, and the only way I'm going to be able to get them out and get them accessible to the community as a whole is to have somebody else that's better at doing the manufacturing, the machining, that has the proper equipment to get them to help us get that stuff out. Um, and then uh, and I've talked to a few people about this, and it's there is one concern that a lot of people come up with is like, well, we like what you make, we like how you make it,
Yeah.
and you know we're still going to be making our products, the snapbacks and dip attachment, and that we're going to evolve those, and um, but the whole purpose of this is so we can still maintain that level of like trying to push the envelope on quality, on
Yeah.
customization, what the options are, because we might do a run of a product where we do, say, we make 50 of them or whatever. And
Hmm.
we might do two or three runs of that product and then just not make them anymore,
Just a
or
limited edition.
raise
Yeah.
price up or whatever it is to kind of slow the volume down on that.
That'd be
um,
great.
because we're just not suited, and we're not going to be suited anytime soon for large scale manufacturing.
Yeah.
It's just not in the cards right now. If
Well, and you can make it exclusive. I mean, if Mutant Metals becomes if you become like an exclusive brand where you've got limited runs of equipment, that's really neat because then people have got, I don't know, 10 or 20 of that are out there of this one piece that's never going to be manufactured again. You just move on to the next iteration of whatever it is. That would
yeah,
be super interesting.
go
Couple. Oh, good. Sorry.
ahead, go ahead.
Uh, I wanted to ask a couple of questions about. So, did you see two questions? Did you see an increase in requests, orders, or revenue as a result of the Rogue uh, co- uh, uh, discussion going on, or was it more just outrage? And then, what would you have done? I'm just curious if Rogue had just said they copied you and just said, "Screw you, we're moving on."
So that's, I mean, that was really I never expected them to reach out or anything. I really
Yeah.
didn't think they were going to. But, outside of like an email of, hey, sorry or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but no, they pretty much contacted me the next day, and we set everything up, set up a meeting. I drove down there. I'm about 3 hours away from Columbus, so
Nice.
drove down to Rogue. Um, we met with Bill and Amick, and they kind of, they spent a good half of their day with us, which, I mean, obviously they wanted to make sure that I knew that it wasn't like they didn't want to be seen as that big guy snuffing out
Right.
the small guy. Yeah, they're just kind of evolving a product the way that every other manufacturer evolves a product.
Yeah.
And I think the looks of how they presented it, I think that's where a lot of the issues were that front facing look of the three options,
Yeah.
the three handle options, and because when you see them side by side, they're
They're like identical.
they are they look very similar straight on, and then but when they're in front of each other, the Rogue version is much larger and it's much heavier. And I would think that if you're going to be someone that has a dedicated spot to put this thing, and I think they ship with a wall strip, if I'm not mistaken, for
Okay.
that kind of for that purpose, because you probably wouldn't want to move this thing around a lot. But it's real solid. They have that cool feature with the changing of the angles with the handles,
Mhm.
um, but it is significantly larger. So if you're in a small space, it's probably going to be a little tougher to use.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think one of the things that gets missed about the UDA is that the handles, a lot of the value from that piece comes from the handles being able to be removed, and you can use them in your squat rack or your jammer arms or whatever,
Yeah.
for handholds, for I've seen people use them for all kinds of stuff, for pull-ups, for because those bars are long enough that if you have a 43-inch rack, they basically almost span the whole thing.
Hmm.
So you could set up a pull-up bar or jammer arm handles, and that's where the handles came from, where people were like, we like these on jammer arms, but we'd like a shorter version for easier use or whatever, and so just started making a shorter version. Um, but back to your question, I never expected them to do this. So it was already, and I didn't really have a lot of time to think about what I would do, because like I
Yeah.
said, they got back to me the day after. But it was really just, okay, well, if they release this product and the dip attachment sales tank, then it's just what's next.
What do you
And
make? Yeah. You make something else.
it's going to be another product, or you know options or whatever. It was probably going to be another product. I have one that's real close to being complete that I've been messing with, and uh,
Nice.
but um, yeah, that was really just going to be the next move, was moving on to another product, and getting what we could out of that one, and taking it is for what it was, and whatever. But what has happened is that you would think there'd be a big increase in sales by just having their name associated with you,
Yeah.
and people that search Rogue run into the Mutant Metals brand, and that does happen.
Hmm.
But what has happened since they started making the dip attachment, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, is that we're not selling any dip attachments. Like, I
Oh,
went from
wow.
selling 10 of these, I might sell, we sold like upwards of 100 of them a month at one time, which
Wow.
is a lot for us. Um, to like, I sell like one a week now. So, um, because everybody's buying the cheaper version that has that integrated gusset, it's stiffer, you know, it functions the same. We still get the people that want the different colors and that, but there's also people holding out for when Rogue releases the colors.
Mm.
So, this gap between when those resources are coming in from Rogue And then when it all started, when they released the product, has been kind of tough because our cash flow is just so low right now.
Yeah.
So that's that's the battle we're fighting right now, is just trying to keep payroll going, and um, keeping machines going, and we're doing it, but it's been easier to do that before.
Yeah.
But
Well, and you've got to come up with new products to keep the brand Mutant Metals going while Rogue continues to produce the new thing for
and,
you, I would
and
assume.
really, the way that my life's going right now, I don't see me being able to really put the manufacturing thing to really put it into high gear, because
Yeah.
I don't have the bandwidth for it. To to get it to get it going to that point would take not just money resources, but so much of my personal time that
Hmm.
it's just not possible right now. If this
Yeah.
was 10 years ago, maybe, but I had my daughter real young. Um, I was 16 when my girlfriend got pregnant, so, and I'm still with her. Um, and, we have a toddler that he was born with club foot. So we had to deal with that driving down to Pittsburgh, and
Mm.
is getting his feet wrapped and casted. And so it's always been just a lot of small stuff being injected into it that's made it difficult to really do any kind of big manufacturing. But I have this product idea book that I think I think I'm up to like 307 concepts now that are just,
Nice.
and I'd say maybe 5% of those have like no analog as far as I discussed this a little bit on the Garage Gym Radio too with Jake, but there's some of the products that don't really have anything else, that you know it's not like another company's making a version of it.
Yeah.
So um, I'd like to be able to focus on those cool products that are more intricate, and maybe they don't have, maybe we can't get them to the point where they have enough margin to make sense, but somebody like Rogue can.
Hmm.
Um, and a lot of the stuff that I'm going to end up designing is going to be, for now at least, with Rogue in mind, to what would make sense in their platform.
Hmm.
um, and try to leverage that a little bit so I could get into the cooler, more intricate, like stuff that maybe Rogue doesn't want to do it, but maybe another company come in and help us with it, or
Yeah.
manufacture whatever. But we, for at least for now, we're gonna, Rogue's helping us out, so we'd like to reciprocate and keep a good relationship going with them. So, and that's another reason why I told everybody, to buy the Rogue version. Not just, it does, the Rogue version actually makes a higher margin even with their cut than my product does when we make it.
Nice.
So we do want people to buy the Rogue version. There's nothing wrong with buying the Rogue version.
Good. I wonder, two things. I'll let you go. Have you talked with Dean over at Black Widow Training Gear?
I don't think so. If I
I
have,
want.
it wasn't any kind of long conversation, but I don't think so. No.
Okay. I wonder. He was at Home Gym Con this year, and I wonder if he would be a good partner. He's pretty slammed as well, similar to what you are, but I think he's got a little bit bigger of a facility. He
Hmm.
might be somebody you could consider partnering with. I don't know. I may be speaking out of turn. He may be too busy, but he's got his own kind of custom fab shop. He does stuff very similar to what you're doing, just kind of for fun, just making stuff
Yeah,
that
I've
he
seen this
wants.
stuff. It all looks pretty nice.
Yeah. Uh, just if you, I don't know, if you had concepts, I wonder. People in the community love him and love you because like they're both really good products. So I feel like that would be, from a quality perspective, you wouldn't be necessarily losing anything. Um, Chris, where can people find you, and where do you want people to go to for Mutant Metals? Where can they locate you?
Um, you could look us up on Instagram. That's where I'm going to be the most active at, which I'm not very active right now on anything because I just don't have time to be.
Yeah.
Uh, but I do try to give some updates on Instagram. That seems to be the most efficient way of like kind of blasting everybody with what's going on. Um, and that you could just search Mutant Metals and you'll see our logo pop up. But um, our website's mutantmetals.com. You for now you could still order whatever you want off the website. I'll expand the platform out a little bit to, probably TikTok and Twitter and all that stuff at some point when I got the time to do it. But the goal is to be involved in those platforms, to be able to go to things like Home Gym Con, to be able to do a lot of
Yeah.
posting and show everybody what's going on. And
Yeah.
the only way I'm going to be able to do that stuff to really like bring people on the inside of what's happening and product development and what's new and where we're going is to unload some of this other stuff. So
People love the behind the scenes stuff.
yeah,
That would be so cool.
yeah, that's the goal right now. So
Like it. Awesome. Chris, you've been great. Thank you so much. I appreciate catching up. I know you're absolutely slammed. So best of luck. And